a quick tutorial on how to do an average and make a graph and show the trend line with the equation. So right now I have a data table here that doesn't have the averages calculated. You don't need a calculator to do this because all spreadsheets are calculators. So if I type an equal sign and then come over here, I don't even have to type an equal sign actually. I can come over here and tell it I want an average in this box. And so it's going to ask me which cells do you want averaged. And so I tell it, I highlight those trials and I click enter and it pops up. Now in this corner here, you see how if I hover over this blue box, it turns into a plus sign. I can bring that down and it will, you notice, change the calculation of the average. So here it is doing row B6 through E6. And that's what I want. Now, when I graph, I want to graph my independent variable, which is the first column, versus my average. I don't need to graph all those trials. So to get that to highlight, I click and drag here. Now I hold down the control key and then I come over to average and I click and drag there. So now I have two columns. They are both highlighted blue. And I'm going to say, please insert a chart for me. Now in science, you typically want a scatter plot. And there we go. Under customization is where you have to change everything. Just because it's digital doesn't mean it's right. Okay? Horizontal axis needs a title. Make sure you have a label and a unit. Now to get to label the y-axis, you come up here to axis and you tell it left vertical. Now the other thing that we need to worry about is that they don't put a lot of minor grid lines here. So right now I'm still on left vertical. I noticed that it started out at 0, 0, which is what I want. But here's where it has major grid lines. So we're going to change them to black. And we want 4. Some of you may think you want 5 grid lines, but you want 4 lines because that gives you 5 spaces. So that means that's 5, 10, 15, or sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So each of these is 3, which could be annoying to you if you don't want it to go by 3s. You can change it. Remember, these are the numbers of lines. So if I pop this up to 5, that means I'll actually have 6 spaces in there, and 15 divided by 6 is not a friendly number. Okay. The other thing you need to change is darken them. Now that gave me the horizontal lines. I need to pop back up here, change this back to horizontal axis, and now drop down. I still have 0, which is good. Again, make the major one dark. Okay, so how many spaces do I want here? I'll also go 4 lines because that'll give me 5 spaces. And now I made everything nice and dark. Okay, so now I've got a grid line that looks like a proper graph paper. Okay, notice here I still have 0, 0, which is what I want. If you want to change your graph dots, you can. Okay, I can make them lime green if I wanted. Okay, I don't want lime green. Okay, you can change how big the dots are. You can change what shape they are if that's something that, you know, excites you. Do not put data labels on them. Okay, trend line. Sure. Okay, now this says custom. This is the custom thing you have. This is boring and not very helpful. So you come over here to the drop down and you say, please put the equation for this line. And then you get the equation. So the slope tells you the relationship between the distance the cup moved and the mass of the ball. Now you may decide that this isn't a very good trend line. You may decide that because of this one out here, the trend line isn't useful. And so then you would come back up here and say none. But now you would have to describe that in your analysis why you chose not to come up with a trend. Okay. Another thing that you can see with this, if I do decide to put a trend line here, there's something called the R-squared value. And when you put an R-squared value, okay, 0.069, that's not very good. You want that to be as close to 1 as possible, because that means your points are pretty much in a line. It doesn't matter if you're doing linear or whatever. It would tell you if you have a r² of 1, you have a good relationship. There's something kind of wonky about this point out here. You can change how thick you want the line. You know, if I want the line to be darker, because that's what opacity means, opaque. Okay. All right. And then you click Insert, and now you have a graph for your data with an equation. Okay, so that tells me for every 1 gram the ball's mass increases, the distance the cut moves is only 0.05 or 0.06 centimeters. Okay, so not even, what, 6 millimeters? 1, 2, yeah, 6 millimeters. No, 0.6 millimeters. So not much of a movement. Again, you have to be a brainiac. You have to actually use your brain and decide, is this really a trend or not? And then you have to state that in your conclusion. If you feel there is a trend and this is a valid number, then you need to be using this number, the slope number, in your analysis.